Posted by you/triple. Stuffed. Oreo. I think I had a run-in with some type of mimic? So I was telling this story to a school friend today and he said maybe I should post it and ask if anyone knew an explanation. Here's some background info. I, a 16 years old male, and my father were hog hunting in southern Tennessee. We've taken trips to hunt for various game every year just after. This year though we had a good season for deer and didn't want to let the hunting be over, so we decided to hunt hogs. If you didn't know, hogs are a nuisance species, meaning they can be hunted any time of the year. Okay, now that's out of the way. He had come with me to my stand and gave me general directions to as if I ended up needing them. I didn't see anything all afternoon, and as the sun began to set I heard what then sounded like a gunshot, and then squealing, from the direction I understood was my dad's stand. I sat for a moment, and decided I'd go look and see if he had gotten something. Seeing as the sun was already setting I figured it'd be better to help with what little light we had. After about 3 minutes of walking I came up on what I thought was his stand. Though, it was more like a shack, it looked very unkempt and rickety. I approached it and saw my dad through a gap in one of the walls, that I assumed was a shooting window. I whispered asking him if he'd gotten anything. He very slowly turned to look at me. If you hunt you know that your head movements must be slow as not to alert any game. But this wasn't that, it was more of a foreign movement, one resembling that of a serial killer in some dumb horror movie. He looked at me with a blank expression for a minute. Well, not blank, it had a slight hint of anger, but I quickly chalked it up to my dad wondering why I'd leave my stand before he called. Seeing that, I decided he was not ready to leave, so I made my way back to my stand without questioning him further. Sure enough, my dad called my phone a few minutes after I got back to my stand, saying he was coming to get me and we'd leave. On the way home I asked him why he didn't say anything when I came by. He looked at me confused and said something along the lines of "you never came to me." And I laughed briefly and asked, "No, seriously." My dad is a jokester, but not a prankster or someone who likes scaring people. But he was dead serious. He genuinely stated that I never came to see him. The next day, after trying for a while to brush it off, I asked him to show me his stand. It was not the one I had went to, and when I went to find where I'd went, there was a field but no stand. I have tried to rationalize it time and again, but I still have no idea what really happened. At this point I want to believe my dad is steadfast in his attempt to spook me. Or that I imagined it somehow, but I know what happened, and I believe my dad. Could anyone have a more accurate idea of what this was? I've always jokingly said it was a skinwalker, but TBH I kinda wonder if it really was. So please, any thoughts? Posted by you/robojobo27. Nightshift in a nursing home. So for around the last 8 or so years I have worked in nursing care, mainly in different care facilities for elderly adults, which at times includes end-of-life care. We cared for a patient who was an ex-Army officer in Queen's Guard, a very tall, broad, larger-than-life individual. They were very proud of their service and still wore their Army-issued footwear to special events, Christmases, birthdays, etc. After a deterioration in their health they passed away. Their family came up to collect their belongings a few days before the funeral but accidentally left the deceased patient's shoes behind. Our manager said she'd keep them in her office for when they could get up to collect them. Now we were all fairly tuned into the paranormal on night shift. I and pretty much all of my colleagues were believers. Eventually a new patient moves into this room. A few days after their arrival they activate the help call around 2 a.m. I respond to it, enter the room, which I find to be absolutely freezing. I switch the light on. They're quite clearly distressed. I ask what the matter is and they told me, "You must help. There was a huge man in here, he was in the corner and in my bathroom." I asked what he was looking for and he said he wanted his shoes back. He just walked past as you came in. Now it takes quite a lot to spook me, especially after some experiences I've had in the dead of night, but at that moment I felt the color drain from me. I tried to keep the head for the sake of the patient and reassure them it was just a dream. Posted by you/bread. Lucky. My 2-year/0 son acting strange. So my son and I recently had to move into my parents for a while after a nasty split between me and his mother. We've been here for a little under a year, and as he progressively got better at talking and moving around on his own, I started to notice something weird that seems to happen 3-4 times a week. He goes into what used to be my oldest brother's bedroom, now has workout equipment in it, and starts to play around on the treadmill or Bowflex, just whatever. And mid-play he'll abruptly just stop and go dead quiet with a blank expression and just stare out the doorway like he's locked onto someone or something. And if you try and ask him what he's looking at, I've tried cause it freaks me out. He either whispers "be quiet" or shushes you. But he does it in a way that makes you feel like if you don't be quiet something bad is going to happen. And you can visibly see on his face the urgency. Sometimes he'll walk really slowly to me without breaking contact with whatever he's looking at and just put his arms up to be picked up. Which is strange in itself cause my son does not like to be held at all. In fact, it's about the only time he's let me, or anyone else, hold him without throwing an absolute fit. I'm not exactly a skeptic, but I've never really experienced anything paranormal that I can remember. But this is something that definitely feels off to me. I get a little cold chill every single time he starts to act like that. Maybe it's just his imagination, I hope, but wanted to get some other opinions. Am I overreacting or does anyone else think this is strange? Posted by you/Sherlockian96. Dying patients see dead relatives/children. Hi everyone. I'm a nursing student, F25, ETA, and during my residency I've had the same odd and creepy experience more than I would have liked to have. I don't know if it's a normal thing or if some of you might have a scientifically accurate explanation, or a medical one, but a lot of the patients I take care of, especially the elders, talk about seeing their dead relatives, e.g. parents, siblings, dead lovers and/or unknown kids besides their beds. This can happen during both day and night, at any given time. What's so strange is that in max 1 to 2 weeks after the apparitions these patients pass away. I tried talking about this with my nurse teacher and asked for some explanation, but all she said it's that those are their relatives comforting and preparing them for death. The children are considered benevolent spirit who serve the same purpose. I'm a bit of a medium, or a psych you want, and always have an eerie feeling when this happen. I can actually feel or see ghosts, it depends on their energy levels and their will to be seen, but I always fail to share the same visions as my patients. Has anyone experienced this kind of thing or have a possible explanation? Posted by you/SayNoToGrow. I had an evil voice warn me about my dad a day before he had a medical emergency. Thought it would be a good idea to ask people to pray for my dad. Pray that his cognition gets better and that he has a lot more happy healthy years on this planet. Thank you. This is really weird and happened about 6 months ago. As I was falling asleep a mean evil voice said your dad's gonna die. It was very evil sounding. It was so scary. I prayed to God to protect my dad, because I wasn't sure if it was a dream or not. It felt real and vivid. I did not tell anyone about it. The very next day, I started feeling dizzy and nauseous. It was so bad, I couldn't even stand up straight. The room was spinning. Then, my dad called me. He said he was scared because he was dizzy and nauseous. It was weird because it was like I was experiencing the exact same thing at the very moment. I was asking him questions like if he had chest pains, and suddenly he stopped responding. I'm like, Dad, answer me or I'm calling 911. No response. I called 911. My dad lives like 35 minutes from me. I felt helpless. I prayed again and remembered my dream and was in a total panic. My dizziness went away. The paramedics got there and my dad was conscious. He refused to go to the hospital because he's stubborn as hell. Long story short, we went to doctor, had a CT scan done. His carotid artery was severely blocked and he suffered a mini stroke. He had surgery and is doing okay, however his memory is worse than ever and I'm scared about vascular dementia. I'm glad he is still here. The odd thing is, why did the voice sound so evil? It literally warned me. I believe my prayers helped the situation, but I'm confused about it. However, there's no way that was a coincidence. It literally happened the next day. Just thought I'd share. Posted by you/Mascoot_Scootma. The time a spirit protected me. First, the backstory for context. At the time of my paranormal experience, the neighborhood that our house is in was not the safest. It was a very lower income neighborhood in the heart of a large metropolitan city in the early stages of development and gentrification. When we moved in, 3 of the 5 houses bordering our property were legit drug houses. In my neighborhood at that time, it was best to keep to yourself, mind your own business and not bring any attention to yourself. Our immediate next door neighbors had constant traffic in and out of their house and it was very obvious what was going on, drugs. We always minded our business, but I tried to still be cordial and say hi and wave if my neighbor was outside at the same time as me. He was always polite to me, but we had very limited interaction. But sometimes some of the neighbors' customers would make me very uncomfortable by watching me, catcalling me or saying sexually and racially derogatory things if I was outside, doing yard work, taking trash out or getting out of my car. I would just ignore them and quickly go inside. But these interactions made me very uncomfortable and I didn't feel safe if I was home alone without my husband. 2 weeks after the paranormal experience that I am about to share, we woke up in the middle of the night to a lot of commotion and when I looked out our bedroom window, I saw the cops raiding our neighbor's house. I found out later from news reports that the owners were charged with distributing heroin, powder cocaine, fentanyl and crack cocaine. They also had a large stock of illegal firearms, a significant amount of cash, and one of the individuals living there was on the run, wanted on murder and robbery charges, and he was hiding out in this house during the paranormal incident that I am about to describe. Now to the paranormal part. It was late one night, after midnight, and my husband and dog were asleep in our bedroom. I was in the kitchen and bent over the trash can to take the bag out and then take it out to our recycling bin on the side of my house so that the trash did not stink up my kitchen overnight. We made chicken fajitas that night, so we had the packaging from the raw chicken inside the trash can. To get to the bin outside, I just walked out my front door into the side of the house due to the way out property is set up. When I was bent over the trash can getting ready to pull the bag out, I felt what I thought was my husband walk up right behind me and lean over me like he was about to hug me. He is 6'3", I am 5'4", so he towers over me. I giggle and bend down further to dodge him and turn around quickly as I say, "I hug you first." And just as I turn and go to grab him around the waist to give him a bear hug, I saw a woman standing in the middle of my kitchen about 4 feet away from me. She put her arms out towards me with her palms open, like you would do when telling someone to stop, and she floated/glided quickly towards me while she mouthed no. And as soon as she got inches from me, she literally vanished into thin air. In one instance she was gliding so quickly towards me, and the next, she just disappeared. I did not hear anything, but her face had an expression of panic, and even though I did not hear her yell it, her mouth screamed no. This happened so fast, literally in a span of 2 to 3 seconds. The only details about her appearance that I could recall was that she was completely solid, not transparent or translucent. She was wearing a long black long-sleeved dress with a double-layered scallop collar. The cuffs of her sleeve were slightly belled. There were little white buttons going down the entire length of the front of her dress. She was about my height, her eyes were strikingly light blue, and she had long, very thick, tight curly, and very unruly jet black hair. She had pale skin and she was floating a few feet above the ground. It happened so quickly, and those were the only details I could immediately remember. I was in such shock and disbelief. Immediately after she vanished, I stood still for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, then I bolted past where she was just a few seconds before and ran into my bedroom screaming for my husband to wake up. He instantly jumped out of bed and grabbed me and asked what was wrong, and I started crying, and all I could manage to sputter out was, "Someone is in our house." Before I could explain further, he grabbed his pistol from his nightstand and ran out of the bedroom to find the intruder. Our dog, 90-pound pit bull, who was in our bedroom at the time, also woke up and immediately started growling and barking at the entrance to our bedroom. He got in between me and the bedroom door frame and was barking and growling incessantly. I heard my husband calling for the dog for backup, and the dog refused to go to my husband, which is very out of character. My husband came back to our bedroom and said he didn't find anyone and that all of the doors and windows are locked and there was no sign of a break-in. I told him he wouldn't find anything or anyone because it wasn't a person but a spirit. At this point, my skeptic husband rolled his eyes and started berating me for waking him up with stupid ghost stories. But when he saw that I was so legitimately scared and shaken up, he sat down and asked me to explain what happened. After I told him the story, he just chalked it up to me hallucinating due to stress from work and insomnia, and held me until I finally fell asleep. The next day, I FaceTimed my mom and told her what happened because I knew she would believe me because she grew up in a haunted house and has seen apparitions before. I just needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy or hallucinating. When I described what the woman looked like, she fell silent and had a look of shock on her face. She told me that the woman that I described was my great-grandmother Gabriella, who my mother was extremely close to. She died before I was born. I have never seen a picture of her because the only photos that the family had of her were in a box that was lost in the 50s during my grandparents' move to the States. However, my mother said that my grandmother still had my great-grandmother's dress that she made herself and wore almost every day. The next weekend, I took a trip a state away to see my grandmother with my mother, and I told her what happened. We spent the day in her attic looking for the dress. My mother found it in a suitcase, and when she pulled it out, I was in disbelief. It was the same dress that the woman I saw was wearing. Long black dress with slightly flared/belled sleeves, small white buttons along the length of the front of the dress, and the unmistakable double-layered white collar with the scalloped edges. After discussing everything with my mother and grandmother, we all believe that on that night, my great-grandmother Gabriella stopped me from taking the trash outside to protect me from someone outside. It is the only thing I can think of, especially considering the contents, crime and questionable people that were always present outside of my front door, so close to me. I truly believe that if I had taken the trash out that night, I may have seen something that I shouldn't have. Drug deal in progress, or been assaulted by one of the neighbor's customers that would threaten and sexually harass me. Luckily for us, after the drug raid, the neighbor's house was foreclosed, a developer bought the house and tore it down to build a new home. The neighborhood has done a 180 and been cleaned up, and our property has increased in value tenfold since this happened 4 years ago. It's a genuinely safe neighborhood now, but after that experience, I will never ever walk out my front door by myself in the middle of the night again. Even if it means waking up to a stinky kitchen.